Well, here to learn a little bit of a story from a fellow that Paul Stimulus and I have gotten to know over the last few years. His name is Austin Ramos. How are you today, Austin?
I'm doing well, thank you, Jim.
Good. And Paul, I asked Paul Stimulus to sit in. Paul runs a family office for us. He's very involved in our Worth Media Group and knows a lot about investing, and Austin does too. So I thought he'd be a perfect guy to sit in with us. How are you today, Paul?
Terrific. Good to see you both.
Austin, I love your story. And there's particular elements of your story that I'd like to touch on because I think there's some great lessons for a lot of us in those stories. Uh, you grew up in the greater Sacramento, California area, right?
Correct. And I live there today.
And I think that therein lies an interesting story because I think you went to UCLA
Correct.
and you had quite a career there as a long distance runner. Tell us about that.
Yes. We can get into it, but two things to know about me. I'm very fortunate and I am hyper competitive. In the competitive side of things, I love athletics. I love playing sports. Running was not my sport of choice growing up, but as it turned out, I was good at it and I like to win. And so I carried that through college and for a period of time after that, running professionally.
I didn't know that you could run professionally.
Yeah, that's Eli's joke. We'll get there and you'll probably talk on that. But I think Eli's favorite joke is, don't you have to be paid in order for it to be a profession? I did file it on my tax returns, but yes, one of us was making a few more zeros than the other.
And that touches on another subject I wanted to get into with you, and that is uh, you've involved yourself with celebrities in business. You're in the private equity business now, and you have been in the business of standing up a lot of consumer facing brands. I'd love to hear how you decided to get into private equity, and then later on a little bit about when you decide to work with celebrities, how they influence your branding decisions and your business decisions. But let's go back to your days at UCLA. Long distance runner, All American for 4 years, still hold some records there. So even though it's been 100 years since you're out of UCLA, uh, what role did your athletic career in college play in your life after college?
I think athletics. I think there's a real value to team sports in general. I think that the life lessons that one can get from team sports far outweigh any athletic achievements you can have doing it. I think it certainly shaped my mindset going forward. The discipline, the emotional control that you kind of need, particularly in a sport like long distance running or an endurance sport. Those lessons, everything to me is often a competition, and those type of lessons they transcend sport. They transcend into things like leadership, and so we get into that. But yeah, a lot of life lessons came out of my athletic days.
I would think, especially with long distance running, you need to have a plan. You need to have great discipline, and you have to be comfortable in the fact that it's a solitary moment for you. Yes, you're on a team, but when in your event, it's very solitary, isn't it?
It is. You're right. I mean, there's a team aspect, but it is a team of individuals, if you will. Everyone is doing their own thing, more or less. So ultimately, it starts and stops with you, and you really need things like consistency, persistence, the ability to tolerate pain. Again, things that transcend sport and kind of get into the business world, but those characteristics of a good endurance athlete, I see show up a lot of times in business.
So, what was your career path after school? I know your family. I think you have a 3 generation family business in the energy business, and it
Exactly.
was a specific decision you made not to go into the family business. Tell us your thinking there.
Yeah. So again, back to the two things that characterize me. I'm very fortunate, and I'm hyper competitive. On the fortunate side of things, I didn't choose to be born into the family I was born into. I happened to be born into a great family. I'm the product of amazing parents and a member of a very large family, a fantastic broader family. And in that family, yes, we have a third generation, or I am a third generation member of it. It's a series of companies in the Western U.S., largely energy and energy services, some real estate. Next year will actually mark our 75th anniversary since
Wow.
the first company was founded, and from which things grew. We're very fortunate. We have a policy, and I know, Jim, we've talked about this before, but on the family side, where you have to go get an education from someone without your same last name before you can go work for a family business. It's a great policy for our family. It doesn't necessarily mean every family needs to have that or walk that path, but we do. And my choice was to go get an education in kind of operationally focused private equity. So I was lucky enough to get into private equity. I spent most of my career there. I've stepped out a couple of times, private equity, to run different companies. But ultimately, about 6 years ago, co-founded a private equity firm with a few folks. And so today, and I'm kind of glossing through things, tell me to slow down or go into one particular thing if you like. But today I wear a couple of hats. One is on the family side of things. I sit on the board of our series of companies, as well as we have a single family office, Paul. And so I sit on the investment committee there. And then on the private equity side, again, we were about 6 years ago, we were looking to make more consumer related investments, and we were having trouble doing it out of our specific entity. And so partnered with a few individuals to create what today is Brand Velocity Group.
And Austin, I'm curious, apart from the policy aspect, was it something you were fighting to go away and not immediately jump into the family business?
I was okay with it. I never had it never registered to me that it was a burden. I think that there's real value in learning from others. And I think that if you put yourself in a situation, private equity is a great space, especially if you can work with operators. It was two other individuals. One guy had run Schwinn Bicycles. The other guy had run Gap, Banana Republic, Armani Exchange, some big retail apparel outfits. And I was the third person on the team, the very junior person. They were operators, quote, playing private equity. And so it was a great learning environment for me to see how they thought about not only the deal structuring side of private equity, but actually helping companies, growing companies, being active in their existence.
And tell us about business. What's your business like today in Brand Velocity?
Yeah, so Brand Velocity, for anyone who doesn't know, it is a private equity firm. We do a lot of things, but ultimately the firm was built on kind of people first principles and belief that impact should be measured just as much by people and culture as it should be by capital. But the firm today, again, it focuses a lot on consumer product and service deals, consumer product and service companies. And we built the firm off of two ideas. One, that marketing works. Two, that people matter. And as you kind of see how we impact our companies, we take a lot of our resources, including our main form of compensation, carried interest. We take, depending on the deal, it could be a third, could be a half of everything that we would otherwise get as a private equity firm. We subsidize those marketing and people resources for the companies we support.
So we met you, Paul introduced me to you when you had a company called Barbecue Guys.
And it's now coming back. Yes. From 2020. 2021 that was. Yes.
So tell us, how's Barbecue Guys doing? What attracted you to that business? What's happened along the way?
Barbecue Guys is doing really well. Barbecue Guys is, for anyone who doesn't know about it, it is a online seller of higher end grills, grilling accessories, outdoor kitchen products. It's a fantastic business. They in addition to having the e-commerce side of things, also have leveraged their two strengths, which are data and a logistics network. Right? It turns out it's challenging to ship a barbecue grill across the country and do so profitably. They've mastered it, and they've leveraged those two things to create products of their own, namely Blaze. Blaze is a higher end grill brand that I think by our estimate is probably about 2 times the size of the next largest competitor in North America. So it's a fantastic business. And yes, at one point in 2020, we considered taking it public, we decided it wasn't in the best interest of the company and the employees at that time. But that's how we met. You had the association with a SPAC, if we're allowed to say those words these days.
Watch your language.
Yes.
It's back to being okay.
Didn't know if this was a PG podcast.
And when we met you, we were intrigued by the fact that you had partnered with a couple of celebrity brothers we already mentioned, Eli and Peyton Manning. And how has that worked out for you? How are they to work with? How did you come to that decision? That it sounds natural to me that you would look to involve yourself with them because they're so likable, and the whole brother thing slash family slash backyard slash community seems to me a natural. Then I assume that's what you had in your mind there.
Well, first I'll start by saying the Mannings are an incredible family, all of them, not just Peyton and Eli, but their brother Cooper and their parents, Arch and Olivia. Our firm, and on the marketing side of things, we have a lot of involvement in sports entertainment. The Mannings came through that side. They originally invested in our companies, and along the way, Eli retired. He was familiar with kind of what we were doing, what we stood for. He could have joined any private equity firm, but wanted to, again, thinking about what he was going to do next in his career, wanted to learn about more about his investments. That included Barbecue Guys. He was an investor of the family. It was the first time the family had collectively invested in something, backed something. So he was invested in that. He learned about that. And then it was, hey, can I sit in on other calls companies are consider investing in? And ultimately, he decided he wanted to join as a full-time partner of the firm. Mm-hmm. Barbecue Guys is a great story, and the Manning's involvement's been a great story. A lot of what we do is kind of creating stories, creating narratives, understanding for not only the employees, but also the customers and the investors, the entire ecosystem, why we're doing what we're doing. And we, like you said, we really reframed the Barbecue Guys story around community, hospitality, connection, not just simply grills. And so as that story became the heartbeat of the company, everyone from the employees, the customers, the investors were able to kind of connect on a deeper level. And the Mannings, given what they're known for, I think a lot of people know them for their athletic accomplishments. I'll speak specifically for Eli here, and I've told him this before. He is an infinitely better human being than he will ever be a great athlete. I can't say it enough. He is who you see on TV is who he is in person. I think there's a lot of authenticity to him and the family. But their involvement in the company really drove a lot of that narrative, that culture that was developed.
Austin, I'm curious, when we were looking back at that opportunity, that was also during COVID, and barbecues and being outside and thinking about convening family outside, that was a much more loaded and important thought process to everybody. So I'm just curious, from going from a sort of barbecue company to what was an outdoor experience during COVID, the marketing side of things, how has marketing evolved within Barbecue Guys?
Yeah, I mean, historically, Barbecue Guys had been much more lower funnel. So I think demand gen, pay-per-click, Google AdWord type of thing. It evolved to upper funnel and involving the Mannings and really creating that story. And you're right, the pandemic was a weird moment in time for companies who did business online. I don't know if either of you have experience with that, Jim and 1-800-Flowers, but
just a little bit.
Just a little bit. But just an incredible moment in time where certain companies were able to meet the consumer where they were.
So it's been smooth sailing. You get the wind in your sails from COVID. Everyone's in the backyard, and everything just goes smoothly and up and to the right.
I feel like that's a leading question, Jim. A lot of those same companies that experienced that up into the right in the pandemic also now are very familiar with the term or the effect, the bullwhip effect, the supply chain chaos, the pandemic hangover in demand. Barbecue Guys is so unique as a company. I believe the next largest competitor is about 1/10 of their size, and so it really does dominate that category. I'd say we grew very quickly, and post pandemic really maintained. We didn't see that growth. We also didn't see a decline because the market shrunk. Our estimate somewhere between 30 and 40%. I think Barbecue Guys has taken market share over that time. But it's been a moment where we haven't seen that incredible growth. We are actually just the last few months starting to see that growth again. Fortunately for grills, there is a useful life on them. They don't last forever. Industry estimates cite around 5 years, depending on the quality of the grill and like. And fortunately, it's been about 5 years. So we expect kind of the position of Barbecue Guys in the market combined
Replacement cycle kick in.
exactly the natural replenishment cycle of that product, replacement cycle, that will have another great run here ahead.
This year, Smile Farms gathers for our 10th annual gala here in New York City at the Ziegfeld Ballroom. It's a wonderful time to celebrate 10 years of creating wonderful work and job opportunities and brighter futures. I invite you to join us. Visit smilefarms.org to be part of this wonderful celebration. Help us prepare for the work that lies ahead. One of the things that we were impressed with you, Austin, and your company was that you have a philosophy of making sure that people beyond management participate in the success of the company. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, absolutely. What you'd be referencing there, so we do a number of things on the people side of it. I'll say my colleague Lauren Sirota, who was one of the head people and culture people focused on culture and people at Patagonia, about a year and a half ago. She joined our firm to lead these efforts. One of the things we do, there's a number of things we do, but one of the things we do is put our capital behind a program called Share the Gains. Mm-hmm. That's where we commit about 10% of our carried interest pool, the main way we get compensated, to non-management employees of every investment, every company. It started, it was actually tied to Barbecue Guys, funny enough. And it started because a question from my partner's teenage son to him on a 20+ hour drive for them in May of 2020. It was driving to Baton Rouge, Louisiana was not realistic from Sacramento, California. So I was the one with 2 masks and a pair of glasses on a plane. Steve, coming from New York, drove. But the question was why? Why don't we share more with employees beyond just the management teams? Why is private equity not driving wealth creation for all employees as opposed to just executives? And maybe why can't it be our money as the private equity, as the general partners, the private equity firm? If we truly believe it's a good thing, then we can't just go and tell our investors to fund it. We should be putting our capital behind it. It's kind of to the word authentic, but it's our way of matching words with action, and that ownership shouldn't be reserved for just a few. So we make all of the employees effectively equity holders. It's not just the morally right thing to do. I think it's also just good business. It creates stronger, more resilient businesses over time.
And that leads us into another area that I'd like to pull on a little bit, because you have such knowledge here, and it might be interesting to some of our audience. But in your family business, you had a transaction, and you were aghast at how much of a tax burden there was in that transaction for the family and the other participants. And you started looking into ESOPs, employee stock ownership programs. And you found, and you become an advocate for families and other individuals who have privately held businesses to consider ESOP as an exit vehicle because of your bent toward making sure everyone participates, and you think that you've unlocked the benefits of that in your businesses. And tell us why should people think about an ESOP as an alternative to selling to a private equity firm or going public or just transacting with another company?
Yeah, I mean, it stems from those kind of core values that our family has, and you see those show up on the brand velocity group side. They of course show up on the family office side, and one of the things we do in promoting employee ownership, and I will say, our companies themselves, or the core companies, don't have employee ownership. Um, I think it's challenging in multi-generational businesses to expand the equity outside the family. Candidly, it's already hard enough 3
Mm-hmm.
generations later with all the family members. But when you add non-family members in there, I think it'd be another layer of complexity. That said, we invest in so many other businesses, and there's no great reason why we can't drive employee ownership. Like the government, similar to anyone who has a mortgage on their home, right? In the interest deductibility, the government has set up programs to incentivize certain behaviors in society. With homes, they want society in general to be responsible and save their money. One way is to incent people to buy homes, create that stable foundation in their life, which ultimately is stable foundation to society. They do other things, and they've done similar things, particularly for business owners. That is the ESOP side of the tax code. It was created back in the 1950s, really had some revisions in the 1970s, and since then, there are a lot of people doing ESOPs. It is a very small fraction of the overall transactions. And right, because again, we have on the family side of things, we have operating companies, we have a family office, and then we have that separate private equity firm. So we can see things through multiple lenses. Maybe there's about 300 ESOPs done a year.
Is that all? Hmm.
Yeah, put that against the backdrop of tens of thousands of other transactions done. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the reason is because oftentimes you have, if you're selling your business as a business owner, one, if you're a privately held business, it is likely that a majority of your net worth is still tied up in the business. And
Mm-hmm.
two, it's potentially or likely of a size that your employees don't have the money to buy that company from you today. And so what do? Or what do? You have to give them a seller note, or effectively they give you an IOU that over the course of the next 8, 9, 10 years, whatever it may be, they'll own the business, but they'll pay you back through the operating cash flows of the business. That that's a lot of risk, I think, to ask a business owner or a family to take on. I mean, as big as people's hearts can be, I think it is tangible risk,
Mm-hmm.
to give up your business in hopes that you get paid back over the next decade. And so, our family, we're doing things now, and yes, that we're trying to bridge the gap between those two things: ownership for employees and really accomplishing the mission of what the government set out with ESOPs, and still making it to where business owners don't necessarily have to wait the 10 years to get paid.
So if Paul is sitting down and advising another family we know and work with, and they have a business they want to sell, why should they consider an ESOP as one of the alternatives if they can afford to take that risk?
Well, a couple of things. If you do an ESOP on your own, for anyone who cares about legacy, there is no better way of maintaining that ownership or the continuity of the same management team, effectively same ownership going forward. Different owners, I should say, but same group of people. When you introduce a private equity firm or a strategic, another company into the mix, you run the risk of having that vision change over time. Another thing, it's just a truth of the private equity model, is that we're taking investors' money, as other, maybe our family's money in part, but other people's money, and we have to give back that money. And so at some point there has to be a liquidity event, which means that company will trade hands again. In a lot of cases, and I cite a lot of our portfolio companies at Brand Velocity Group, it makes sense for that company. Our ability to grow those companies outweighs the potential negative of every 5 or so years the company trading hands.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of businesses, that kind of changeover isn't great. And so one reason to do is creating that continuity. Second reason is if that family wanted to, or that owner wanted to continue, if they wanted to hold the seller note, if they wanted to give the employees the loan to buy the business from them, the government set up a lot of tax incentives to do it, both for the seller of the business as well as the company. In a certain structure, the company may not pay state or federal tax permanently into the future. And I think that's really interesting when you think about the health of a business, the competitiveness of a business, to have that incremental 20 to 30% of every taxable dollar stay in the business to help it. So the government's done a good job of I think, creating those incentives. And then the third thing is, I think there's groups emerging that are willing to, instead of the seller loaning the money to the employees, those groups are willing to loan the money to the employees so that it looks, smells, and feels like a normal transaction to the seller. And that's one thing that our family is doing.
So in an ESOP, either let's call it a family, the selling family can provide the financing in the form of a note, or they could work with a third party like a private equity firm or some other lending institution to have a third party lend the money to the employee group that goes to the family, or some in between, some of the proceeds, and have a note on top of that. So there's some equity coming out to the family. So it sounds to me like there's variables. It's not just one from column A and one from column B.
Yes, and more specifically, because we looked at it, it can't be through private equity. Private equity, the government set up rules. It can't be private equity. It's kind of institutional investors that plays the game. But family offices like yours and Paul, what you're doing, you could certainly be the capital source for those employees and be a stepping stone for the owner who does want to transition the business to their employees, but doesn't necessarily want to take on that full risk.
It just brings up an interesting point, Austin. I mean, here you sit as a part of a family office, having a family business. So as an operator, you have the private equity side. I mean, you really have a bunch of different hats here that you're able to wear all at the same time. I'm just curious, when you think about family offices and then you think about BVP, the intersection of those two, are you seeing, interesting ideas only percolate up through the family office, construct, or is private equity, taking all the best ideas and moving forward? I'm just curious, all the different hats you have, if they're all equally, compelling and exciting at any given moment, or do you see the private equity a little bit more so?
Yeah, I think that anyone that says they've got their one solution, that one solution is going to be right for every situation, is probably not someone you should work with. I really believe that it's rare that something cuts across every situation. I think family offices are really good for certain situations. The other side, they're horrible for other situations, or at least by comparison to private equity. Private equity serves a real purpose, plays a real role. The companies that we're looking at BVG, like sports opportunities, we've got a sports dedicated group. They are really best served for the platform built there for private equity, not just private equity that understands sports and entertainment.
Well, get some good insights today in terms of how you think as a retired but still active athlete, as a business person, as a family leader, as a family participant. Lots of really interesting insights, and it all tells me and Paul that you're a good guy, Austin, and you're a good guy to partner with in business. Should anyone have an interest in talking to you about your private equity business, they have a business they want to sell, or they might be looking to get involved in your deals, best way to contact you?
Track me down on our website, brandvelocitygroup.com. I use that tiny
brandvelocitygroup.com.
Yep. Tiny social platform. LinkedIn also works. My emails, aramos@brandvelocitygroup.com.
Thanks, Austin. Thanks for sharing your story with us today. Interesting one, and I think you're early in writing your chapters.
I appreciate that, Jim. Thanks, and good to see you, Paul.
Thank you, Austin.